can never have too many tools. Shop DeWalt deals at Lowe's. Get a free Select DeWalt 20-Volt Max Power Tool when you buy a Select 20-Volt Max 5-amp-hour battery kit. Plus, get a free additional DeWalt 20-Volt Max 8-amp-hour battery when you buy a DeWalt 10-inch 20-Volt Max dual-bevel compounded miter saw. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 6/24 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
The primary purpose of Uniquely Human, the podcast, is to educate and inform. The views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute educational or medical advice. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with each individual or family for specific guidance.
Uniquely Human, the podcast, is produced by Elevated Studio. Music is graciously provided by Matt Savage of Savage Records.
Hi, I'm Dr. Barry Prezant, clinical scholar, researcher, and consultant on autism and neurodiversity, and a Brooklyn boy raised in the big city.
And I'm Dave. I'm none of those things, and I grew up on a farm in Illinois. But being on the spectrum myself, I have plenty of personal insight to lend.
And this is Uniquely Human, the podcast, a show that illuminates and celebrates autism and neurodiversity. Today on Uniquely Human, the podcast, Dave and I are very excited to have a conversation with Dr. Cindy Ariel on a topic that many of you have requested and that Dave has requested. So we're going to go ahead with that in a minute. So welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. That's exciting. I didn't know it was requested.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of people threw that in our lineup of future podcasts. And the other thing, let me say before we share a little bit more about you, is that you are in practice with a dear friend and a former guest of ours, Dr. Robert Nassif. So that makes us part of the same family in a way. So, Dr. Cindy Ariel has practiced as a psychologist for over 20 years, starting out working a night shift on a crisis hotline. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology and worked with developmentally delayed children and adults in both outpatient community mental health and private inpatient facilities. Cindy received her Master of Science degree from the Graduate School at Hahnemann Medical College, which is now Drexel, and earned her doctorate from Temple University in 1992. She became co-founder and CEO of an independent psychology practice in Center City, Philadelphia. Cindy is co-editor of the book Voices from the Spectrum and also author of Loving Someone with Asperger's Syndrome, Understanding and Connecting with Your Partner. That really resonates here because I really, really love Dave. So, and that book is a self-help book for partners of somebody on the autism spectrum. But the new book about to come out is called Autism and the Two of Us, to be published very soon by Guilford Press. And as I alluded to, this, of course, is an area of Dave's interest and experience and writing as well. So, Cindy, if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey that led you to your current focus on relationships, and especially your choice to continue on in your writing a new book now on this topic.
Sure. All that's related. So I was always kind of shy and misunderstood, therefore, and a very introspective kind of person who then wanted to understand other people. So that's really important to me, understanding all kinds of people. So I wanted to be in private practice and work with all kinds of people, but I specifically geared myself to people I called living in alternative relationships, which is like a lot of LGBTQ, maybe step-family relationships. And also within that is a lot of neurodivergent people. Mm-hmm. And so first I was working with individuals but individuals always come in and talk about their other people or looking for people or, that.
Right. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So then I just started writing stuff about that. And that's when I was asked to write the first book, Loving Someone with Asperger's Syndrome, which was always a very actually problematic book. Because it was written only for the neurotypical partner, I never liked that, but that is what the publisher asked me to do. So, hey, somebody asked me to write a book. I knew I could do it. So I did, but I always felt a little wrong about it. And I also got questions about it, like, hey, what about me? What am I supposed to do? Or, oh, this means my partner doesn't have to change or think about it. And not only that, but right after that book was published, Asperger's syndrome was no longer a thing. And all kinds of things in the world changed. And it was just like, oh my God, I really just want to redo that so bad. So that's what I did.
Good for you. That's the crux of it. It's easy for people on the sidelines to look at it and say, oh, why'd you only take one perspective? It's like, you weren't there when I got the phone call from a publisher saying, you're a subject matter expert. Could you write this book for us? Sure. It's very important, I think, that you are able to look at this and say, wait. There's more that I want to say. And now you're doing that because I think some people forget that they can actually take the reins in their hands and go further with a topic.
And this time I actually struggled with that a little bit because I knew what I wanted to write, and the publishers I approached didn't understand it. They were like, you have to do it this one way. But this time I was like, no, I know I can do it this double way because I work this way. I can do it. So I finally was able to convince these people.
Good.
So there probably are 1,000,001 books on relationships. Why is it needed to focus more specifically on neurodivergent, neurotypical, and I put that in quotes, relationships?
Yeah, well, a lot of people, at least in my day, I've actually been practicing a lot more than 20 years, but I don't usually say that. So
you could say it to us.
Who are we going to tell?
Yeah, right. So, okay, now I lost my train of thought.
Practicing for 20 years?
Yeah, it wasn't about that. It was it was about so everybody was working with autistic kids. And then they forgot that, well, the autistic kids grow up and they're autistic adults. And, now they're in relationships and trying to live a life. And now what do you do? And so, so many people come in, they either didn't know they were autistic or they're just finding out, or maybe they did know and they have no idea how to, be married or something. They could write journals about it.
Yeah.
So,
and could it also be that one of the things that led to some hypothesis, presumption on the part of an individual that they are on the spectrum or different is maybe specific difficulties they have in relationships? I know some people specifically, and actually I'm thinking about one or two people that I knew when they were very young children who've said to me, I have problems in relationships with young women, but their relationship difficulties led them to kind of reflect on, who am I? Why am I having these difficulties?
yes, that happens a lot. Maybe more often the partner comes up with that. Like, I've read some things. I think maybe you should read them. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you need to read them.
Yeah, I can see that. And my own experience, tracking exactly this trajectory is that, my wife, Kristen, brought a lot of things to my attention early on in our marriage. It was very rocky shores. In fact, we were looking at it like, probably splitting up is probably the best thing to do, but we don't want to do that. So let's work on this. I got this Asperger's diagnosis, and we've been married 5 years. And so she approached it in a way that was at first, like I think most spouses or partners would say, how can you be more compatible to me? And fortunately, Kristen also was looking at it through the lens of how can I be more compatible with Dave? How can, knowing this now and sort of the themes that emerge that are common across anybody with an autism or Asperger's diagnosis are the things that are pretty easy to point to, right? Like structured family time versus just an open Saturday and Sunday with no schedule. But sort of preparing not only me, but also our two toddlers at the time, for what an event was going to look like beforehand. So there were no surprises. Those, thinking ahead about, okay, we're going to be in the car for 12 hours together on this road trip. How do we just make sure that everybody is actually enjoying the vacation? So I was fortunate that I had a partner who looked at it like, how can we be mutually compatible? I don't think that always happens. I think sometimes I've observed couples where the perhaps neurotypical spouse is saying, fix this person.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I say, nope, nope, nope.
Yeah.
The person isn't the problem. The compatibility is the issue.
Yeah. That's more common. At least for the people who come into therapy about it, right? It's usually the typical one trying to bring this person in. Look what they do. That's not what people do. Fix
Yeah.
them. Help them change that because it's wrong.
Hmm.
And how do you even begin to address that? Because it's a philosophical culture shift. It's not a
It is.
behavioral shift.
Yeah. It's a whole framework shift. So yeah, and I would have to say that people do get a little mad about it,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes how can you say that that should be okay? That I don't know, because they're pacing and that's embarrassing me. I should just let them. No, that's wrong. Nobody does that. That's weird.
Mhm.
Um, and when I try to explain, um, like what needs to change is your embarrassment about that. Um,
Yeah.
they kind of feel like, well, you must be autistic then, as if that's a bad thing,
Right.
to be agreeing with such a thing. So I
Mhm.
get that. Actually, I get that from both sides. Like you're not autistic enough and you're not typical enough.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's so hard to approach, and that's why I was looking forward to this discussion because so my wife, Kristen, her philosophy was uh, for herself was okay. This is who Dave is. Got it. So let's build something around what's real, and I know
Yeah.
that he's going to say something that makes me cringe, but that's not me. That like if
Hmm.
it's not making him cringe, that's between him and whoever he's talking to. I'm not
Yes.
part of that. And she had to really do this, roll up her sleeves and do a lot of work on herself. And now what she does as a coach, she gets involved in a lot of relationship issues, and she will tell the partner the work you can do is on yourself. So just like you said, Cindy, it's
Yeah.
not we don't deprogram your partner. What we do is we expand sort of your abilities to look at something and say, is this a me problem or are my thoughts the problem? And working with people to just stay in their own lane. And that is a heavy lift, especially when sometimes, not for nothing, the neurodivergent partner sometimes has no interest whatsoever in mutual compatibility. They would like it to be, but they don't ultimately roll up their sleeves and do the work on themselves. So
Mhm.
it's not to say that only the neurodivergent folks have these blind spots.
Sure. It's really hard on both sides, but that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to write, to both people. Like you both have to consider this. Your
Mhm.
neurotypical partner was born that way. They can't help it,
Mhm.
Hmm.
So if you're autistic and they bother you, you know, they're neurotypical. Like I said, they can't help it.
Mhm. You know,
Yeah.
I think another way of putting this is kind of looking through a neurodiversity lens rather than what's acceptable neurotypical behavior. And I think you both have given that description in a sense by saying, listen, I respect the fact that you have a different brain and you process relationships differently and you process everyday routines. And your needs for regulation, might be a little bit different, but that's okay because that's who you are.
Mhm.
So if we could do this, Cindy, I think we've been speaking kind of in platitudes a little bit, but there are some
Mm.
specific challenges that I think you talk about. And I mean, we could probably spend an hour on each one of these, but maybe we could kind of go down and maybe kind of encapsulate some of the patterns that you run across and that you write about in your new book. So, if there are challenges in communication, what might those challenges be in a neurodivergent, neurotypical relationship?
One of the ways people um, are diagnosed autistic have to do with their difference in communication with neurotypical people. So that is so huge, right? Because when your brain is wired differently, everything is wired differently.
Mhm.
So the rules of communication are very, very different. I don't want to keep saying like it's not all neurotypical people, it's not all autistic people, but that's true. So whatever I say doesn't apply to everybody on either end. But in general, um, there are a lot of major issues. So one really big one is that autistic people tend to be more direct,
Mhm.
and holistic or neurotypical people tend to be more indirect. And it seems so simple, but it isn't. There was a guy I was talking to, and he was an autistic guy. And he kept asking this woman out who's like in his college class or something. And he keeps asking her out, and she keeps having an excuse of why she can't go out. Now, to most of us, that shows clear disinterest. We're not going to keep asking her. But what he said is, I think it might be disinterest. But if she doesn't say it, there's hope. So I'm going to keep asking until she has to tell me. And she's probably neurotypical. She's probably never going to tell him. She might be going to ghost him, or she'll hope the classes switch, or some kind of way.
Mhm.
But that's a really big challenge. It's a big challenge when you're living with somebody and somebody's mad, so they're slamming drawers and slamming doors, and their autistic partner is like, "Why are you making so much noise?"
Yeah.
They're not thinking, "Oh, I just did a thing," and they're pissed.
Yeah, they're not reading the subtext. They're not putting themselves in the mental or emotional state
Mhm.
of the drawer slamming person that they just offended.
Yeah, and the offended party is just like, I can't believe they don't even care. They could see obviously how mad I am, and
Mhm.
actually, they can't.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting how much these things are related because the next thing on our little kind of list of areas where there might be challenges is differing sensory needs. So
Yeah,
slamming the door or slamming the drawer. Uh,
right. Like, ow, that's just hurting my ears. Why are you doing that?
yes.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the different sensory needs. I mean, autistic people have a very high level of sensitivity, to which neurotypical people are pretty much insensitive because they don't have that. I mean, there are some things that bother a lot of people, like nails on a chalkboard or a balloon screeching. Uh, I know that was one that bothered one of my brothers, but um, in general, autistic people have a higher level of sensitivity, and neurotypical people just like get mad at them. Like, why are you holding your ears in public? That's so embarrassing.
Hmm.
Instead of realizing, oh, when they do that, I need to get them out of here, or go lower the thing if I can, if there's any control over the noise or whatever it is. Um, that's not the first thing that comes to people's mind. They just have to stop that. It's embarrassing me.
And what's so interesting about that embarrasses me is there's not one person at the party who's looking at somebody who, like, let's use that example. A loud DJ comes on a very terrible microphone at a wedding. Hey, everybody, we're gonna chicken dance or whatever the heck.
And
It
we go
starts,
like,
yes, and somebody very gets a very concerned, very stressed look on their face, cover their ears, and the partner's like, "That's embarrassing me." Nobody at that wedding is looking at the person covering their ears, and then, all right, we'll give them a pass, but what's wrong with their partner? Why would their partner allow such nonsense? Nobody's thinking about the partner in that way. It's a very strange assumption, but it's human nature, but it's very strange.
Hmm. You
right.
know, one thing that I experienced directly in my family, and I might have mentioned this in a previous podcast, is, um, and I guess in a sense, my wife is kind of neurodivergent in this specific way, but she's extremely highly sensitive to smells,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mhm,
is my son.
mhm.
And which is interesting because slamming a door, you assume, well, the other person is not thinking of me and my needs, and that's so loud for me. But you go into environments that are out of your control, and there could be strong smells. And I got to get out of here. This stinks in here. So, it's
Yeah,
not so bad. Come on. uh, and I imagine, there are other examples that are on sensory issues that it's not the other person causing the issue, it's their sensitivity, which might interfere with what you're going to do. Will you go to that restaurant? Will you go to that neighborhood where they don't pick up garbage as quickly as they might in a city in the summertime? So yeah, that spills over and it also gets flows over into communication. How do you talk about that? Now,
right.
something that we know has always been a very, very important area of examination in autism is emotional expression and emotional understanding. So, what are some of the issues that you talk about, as well as what you experience in your supporting people?
Yeah, that's a main pain point for people, um, because the misunderstandings about how people express things is really large. Um, so I've seen autistic partners who are sure that their neurotypical partner is crazy, like really crazy, because they're very emotional. They cry or they yell when they get upset, which for neurotypical people is normal. It's a thing they do.
Yeah.
Um, and then they think the neurotypical person who shows the emotion thinks that their autistic partner is just so cold and uncaring because their expressions might be more subdued or more logically based, just less emotional. Um, so learning to understand that about each other, that you still care about each other and no, they're not
Mhm.
crazy. It's just a difference in the way they express things.
Mm.
It's hard. It's
And,
all hard.
and, and so much about what makes either relationships work or not work, I assume, has to do with reading the other person and knowing what they're feeling. Or are they feeling, as you just said, and expressing it in much, much more of an extreme way? Uh, but
And
you,
this is why, it all goes back to communication a lot of the time because it has to be these things have to be stated, has to be direct. You can't assume your partner knows what you're feeling or how you feel about them or what you're thinking unless you talk about it, especially in these relationships where people don't pick up the cues all the time or
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah, that approach to how it's being talked about too is also fraught with, well, I should say loaded with opportunities, not fraught with peril. Um,
There you
because
go.
the
Yes.
the framing of that conversation is also very important. One of my favorite comedians of all time, Bill Burr, um, and Dave Chappelle, both my two favorite comedians, both have jokes about how anytime their spouse wanted to talk to the had to have a talk with them, it was always going to be about something they had to fix about themselves.
Yes.
that
Yeah.
the
Very good. Yeah.
that the partner is always this work in progress with scaffolding around the building, and the perfect partner is just under glass in a museum display somewhere. She's finished. And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
their joke. But I think what has worked for Kristen and me has been when she has approached something just as a very clear matter of fact. This is where I'm at. And when you act like this, what it does to me is this, or to the kids, this is how the kids are feeling when you're acting like this. That's always been the most helpful. And I think if the partner, and it works both ways, I've had to sit Kristen down and say, like, you're kind of making assumptions that I want to be at the same thing you're doing, and for as long as you're doing it. And, can we work this out? You're much more productive when you can sit down and be completely matter of fact and direct. And I think sometimes the frustration with couples is maybe your partner is speaking indirectly or speaking around the topic and kind of walking on eggshells because you don't want to set the person off. And that's also where somebody like you can really help, like an intermediary can help translate, holistic speech, neurotypical speech, whatever the speech, into neurodivergent speak.
Yeah, that's a thing that I do try to do. And I try to help people go from, blaming to like, here's a thing, here's a problem. What can we do about it? How can we make a change so that I don't feel so bad when this happens? And that's about both of us. What can we both do?
And I think it's I don't know if it's a culture thing in the Americas or whatever, but like it doesn't seem like we are trained, educated. We don't develop any sort of sense of enforcing our boundaries in a healthy way. So some of us become doormats, some of us become tyrants, some of us become rigid and inflexible, and others are just like, hey, walk all over me. And I think having that initial discussion where we're saying very honest things about, when you act like this is how it makes me feel, blah, blah, blah. That needs to be reinforced until both partners have this sort of behavioral habit with each other. And reinforcing those boundaries can also make people feel uncomfortable. But if they don't, it unravels the whole first discussion.
Yeah, and that's why you have to have a lot of check-ins. Like it's not one and done when you have a conversation. You have to keep having the conversation. Things change, people evolve, issues change.
Sure.
So something that Dave alluded to earlier, that also can be challenging. I'm sticking to my little checklist here. is daily routines. And how much does life have to be predictable, or how much do you enjoy go with the flow surprises? Any thoughts about that, and how much do you run into that in your work?
Yeah, a lot, because most people need some kind of routine. And autistic people tend to need it even more. It's not just a preference, it's almost a need. It sometimes is a need for the structure, for knowing what's going to happen. And so it could help them with chores around the house or things that need done. Routines, can help with all that kind of stuff. And that often comes up as an issue between people.
Yeah, I like to say that we all benefit from predictability, but many neurodivergent people crave predictability. It's something that really kind of sets the threshold of regulation and dysregulation. How much are you familiar with what is going to be happening down the road in your life on that day?
Yeah, well, this is something really important too. I was going to say before, and you brought it up again, is like sometimes this isn't just a preference. Like neurotypical people think like, hey, I don't feel like doing it either. It's not just I don't feel like doing it. It's I can't, sometimes it's not a preference. It's a real need for something that has to be dealt with.
So I'm sure that some of our listeners are thinking about one of the elephants in the room here, and that is sexual and intimacy part of relationships, which we could do probably 5 episodes on that. And we actually had Michael John Carley talk about his book on sex a while ago, almost 2 years ago, I think. So what are some of the themes that you see may be challenging? And then we're going to shift the conversation a little bit more towards what's helpful, uh, rather than focusing on what might be difficult. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure. Well, you can have sex without intimacy, and you can have intimacy without sex. So some people need the intimacy for the sex. Some people don't. So just like with everything else, you have to, go with your own. You have to know yourself and your partner and preferences and likes and dislikes, and nothing, at least to talk about, should be off the table. It doesn't mean you have to do things you don't want to do. But I mean, sex in couples is like, usually we have to work everything else out first, because so many things interfere with sexual relationships, because of the thing of people need to feel good with each other to have sex first. Some people.
Sure.
So
Yeah, if you're feeling embarrassed all night, you're not going to be in the mood when you get home from that from that wedding with the loud DJ, and neither one. One partner's stressed, the other partner's resentful. That doesn't warm anybody up for intimacy.
right, that just doesn't take into account. There's some people that don't need to be warmed up; they can just have sex, and good for them. But their partner isn't always on
Sure,
board, so
sure.
problematic right there.
Yeah.
And again, the interrelationships between these different areas we've discussed, sensory issues, communication issues. So much of this
All
folds
there.
into some of the kind of most powerful parts of a relationship, if that is part of the relationship, the sexual and the intimacy piece. Again, can be separate, but yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
So I think, up until now, we've been alluding to the fact we mentioned that, well, maybe a person is not diagnosed or does not embrace a diagnosis or totally unaware. What special circumstances do you run into when one partner may not realize that he or she is neurodivergent or that the other partner is neurodivergent?
If you don't realize you're neurodivergent, it's often harder to make the changes you need to change, or you need to make, to be in relationship with somebody else. Um, if you don't know that somebody's neurodivergent, then you're going to be less understanding,
Hmm.
more angry. So learning about neurodiversity often, shifts the people from blame and resentment to understanding, and then you can start to build a relationship from there.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I I often say that when partners ask, "Hey, should I get a diagnosis or should my partner get a diagnosis?" My first question is, "Well, who's it for? Like, and what are you going to do with the information?"
Hmm.
Exactly.
If you're
Yeah.
looking at this as a get out of jail free card, no. If you're looking
Right.
at this for like real self reflection and to understand your system versus your partner's system and mutual compatibility, that's a very excellent reason to go for it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And if, some people are self-diagnosed and their
Hmm.
partner agrees and they agree, and you could work with that. That's okay. You don't have
Absolutely.
to, it doesn't have to be official,
Right.
but it has to be acknowledged,
Yes.
you know. Mhm.
In one of the points that I ran across in looking at a pre-publication copy of your new book, uh, Autism and the Two of Us, uh, you say that typical ways of loving must be redefined for success in a neurodivergent, neurotypical relationship. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, because all the things we've been talking about create, let's say for a neurodivergent person, an autistic person, probably a different idea of what their partnership or marriage or whatever it is going to look like.
Hmm.
It's not the romantic idea from, neurotypicals go with, that you see in society. It's often a different idea of, it just feels good to be in a room with somebody who accepts you for who you are. Um,
I'm going to quote you specifically, okay? And I think it's right along what we were just talking about. And
okay.
that is, you say that the differences can create new paths to intimacy rather than becoming a wedge that tears the relationship apart.
Similarities are easy, right? That's how we meet somebody and think, oh, this person's great. We love all the same things and this is great. But then when you start to learn about differences and conflicts happen, it creates an opportunity to either split or to get to know a person deeper and to really develop a loving relationship of who the person is, not who they are just with all the things that agreed with you with.
Getting to know a person more deeply. I mean, that's one of the things that I think a neurodiversity lens allows us to do. I know since I've been exposed to more and more discussions in the neurodiversity framework, I reflect a lot more about myself. I think more deeply about myself on everything from sensory issues to my communication style to, well, this person, a year or two ago really would have been off-putting to me, but now I find the person interesting. And boy, that's just kind of double that in a relationship that you're working on together. I often say that some of my autistic and neurodivergent friends are more self-aware and more deeply kind of searching for who they are as a person, at least from my perspective, than some of my neurotypical friends, because they've been working on it so much in their lives, in terms of, well, why did I react that way? Or why is this aspect of my sensory world so dysregulating for me? It's almost like a constant self-examination, which always results, I think, in kind of not all when it happens, it results in a greater sense of competence and comfort with who you are.
Well, neurodivergent people always have to look at themselves, and neurotypical people often don't.
Mm.
They're not asked to as much because the way they do things is the right way, clearly, because it's the way everybody does things.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe makes neurodivergent people more open to change. And unfortunately, I think sometimes they agree that they should try to work to be like their partner, their neurotypical partner, or they agree that they're not good the way they are because they've heard that all their life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an area that I try to, what I try to model for both of them. What I believe is they must be saying something that makes sense, even if I don't understand it. Mm-hmm. So I work really hard to well, tell me another way or help me understand that another way. And that often helps both people both feel like, okay, somebody wants to understand me. And also, oh, maybe my crazy partner is worth trying to understand.
Yeah.
Because usually the kernel that's in there is like amazing. Like when I can't understand it and then I finally do, it's like, oh, wow, that's a thing I couldn't get it because I didn't make that connection, but it's like really an amazing connection. I don't know, like one guy and a couple, the autistic guy, they have a 5-year-old, and the neurotypical person was saying, we just have to cut off screen time. Screen time is bad and they shouldn't have screen time. And the autistic person was trying to say, ultimately was trying to say, screen time helped me. Like I wouldn't have become who I am, who's like an amazing professional right now, without screen time. So we need to talk about how we can do screen time, not just screen time, yay or nay. And they had just some really brilliant ideas on how screen time can be amazing, which I never thought of, and either had their partner. They just wanted to we just have to cut it off. So things like that. You have to listen to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and don't you find that when somebody is allowed and safe to be their authentic self in a or as close to authentic self as possible in a relationship, that it just really creates it makes you feel closer, both of you in the relationship. You're both more accessible to each other and to the relationship because you're both feeling safe in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And in the therapy room, I actually see them getting happier. Like especially the autistic person who didn't feel like anybody ever listened to them before. They were just supposed to try to, make their relationship neurotypical. Um, they start talking more and, feeling freer to say things. And I just love that.
Hmm.
And sometimes their partner loves it and sometimes not, but
Sure.
I always do.
So you just led me to kind of a difficult question, but one that I'm sure our listeners would love to hear your thoughts on, and that is kind of some of the active ingredients that make relationships work. And you just spoke about, being heard. That okay, this person's really getting me and hearing me. Uh, any other
Yeah.
thoughts about that? When you've seen in your practice relationships that at first, you know, when people come to you, it doesn't seem like it's working much at all, but over time, they're saying, "Oh, wow, now they are moving along the right path here." What's happening to help people move along the right path?
Yeah, I would put listening at pretty far up at the top of there. Um, but I always like to think if you think about putting your partner first every day, then you'll probably do all the things you need to do, like listen, like be open to a different perspective that your partner's going to give you, um, like um, have a culture of appreciation for who your partner is,
Hmm.
even if they're kind of quirky. I mean, probably in the beginning you thought that was cute. So find that again. Um, and I'm trying to think of what else helps in the moment. Always, being direct with how you communicate and talking straight and not beating around the bush, because that just, if you try to give somebody a test on whether they're going to understand you or not, they're not going to pass it unless you're really clear. So all of that can start to shift a relationship. And then it's a process.
It's you just alluded to the notion of a culture of understanding. Uh, One thing we didn't talk about, which again could be a whole other episode, is how cultural differences, on top of brain wiring differences, can influence relationships. I mean, I'm a Brooklyn schoolyard kid from New York City. My wife grew up in a small rural area in Connecticut, and those are things that have to be worked out and have had to be worked out over years. The way I tend to be more direct, and also my pace and everything else. But how do you work on that? I know this is an incredibly complex question, but when you have cultural differences in a relationship
Hmm.
that are superimposed over the differences that have to do with neurodivergence and neurotypicality.
Well, there's all kinds of differences between people in relationship, which, that kind of brings me to uh, when things are going wrong and it's a neurodiverse relationship, people want to blame the neurodivergence, or they might want to
Yeah.
blame the other culture.
Hmm.
It's not that. If you're two people willing to work together on whatever it is, your culture,
Hmm.
your brain, you know, um, you can work things out as long as they're not, like the real red flags of things like emotional and physical abuse or things like there's no excuse for that, or um, boundary violations, like serious ones, or really toxic communication where you devolve into cursing and yelling at each other. Like
Hmm.
that is not because of a cultural or neurological difference.
Right. That's the crux of it, is separating. I had a lot of people ask me, okay, so you were an autistic husband and you wrote this memoir about how you and your wife saved your relationship. That's great. How much of that was, I think what people are forgetting is when they read my book, they have to see that there's being a husband, there's being Dave, and then there's being autistic. And some people are looking at things like, hey, like my spouse loads the dishwasher wrong too. And it's like, well, that's not an autism thing. That's just, your spouse is probably an engineer and he wants to see things logically, predictably, like where the water's going to hit and what's, how to optimize the loading of the dishwasher. And you're saying, oh, you've got a busy life. You just throw the dishes in there, get on to the next thing. And it's like, that has nothing to do with autism. Now, if your partner's special interest is talking dishwashers for 6 hours, that might be a spectrum-y thing, but you can work with that. You can work with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Amazing, Dave. I knew you were an audio engineer. I didn't know you were, what would it be, a hydro engineer? I mean,
dish hygiene engineer.
Dish hygiene. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cindy, this has been a wonderful discussion, and I feel like we're probably just scratching the surface, and that you do a much, much deeper dive in your previous book, Loving Someone with Asperger's Syndrome, and now your new book, which will be available very soon, if not now, in July or August of this summer. So that's terrific. Again, your new book is Autism and the Two of Us. And thank you so much for your thoughts and your experience. I mean, stories and experience is so important, and you just have a treasure trove. So very, very important.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. It's fun to talk about it. I don't get to talk about it in this way with a lot of people.
Yeah, you're in the trenches. It's you don't talk about the battle when you're in the trenches, but it is nice to just reflect on it sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks.
Thank you.